Hi divers, thank you for joining us today on this Sisters Call all about fish and sea creatures of the South Pacific and Oceania. This call is specially tailored for people who are traveling to places like Fiji, French Polynesia, the Philippines, Malaysia, and anywhere on that side of the world. This call is a part of our monthly series called the Surface Interval Sisterhood, where we connect online every other month to talk about diving issues, learn together, and stay connected in between dive trips. This is also part of our Scuba Marmaids Dive School. Check out these links for more information, and we hope to see you on another call soon. Enjoy.
So we are talking about unique creatures. We're going to focus a little more toward the South Pacific this time. However, we're going to talk about why this covers all of the trips that we posted kind of our little announcements in, because not just Fiji, that's just the next set that we have coming up. Myra is already on her way there today, and a lot of us are heading there in the next week or so. So for our creatures, a lot of them have overlap with the Coral Triangle. And the Coral Triangle, if you're not familiar, basically covers the countries of Indonesia, Malaysia, Philippines, Papua, Solomon Islands, and then Timor-Leste. And this area that you can see in that little map right there supports 76% of all known coral species. But in order for an area to qualify as part of the Coral Triangle, it has to boast at least 500 different species of coral, or of like reef building coral varieties. So not very many places have that kind of variety. And Fiji has, I think it's about 390 or over 390. So we are talking about a similar region and not actually that far off from the Coral Triangle. So you're going to have a lot of similar life as to what we have in the Coral Triangle, where we do a lot of our trips. But just know that there's so much overlap in the kind of creatures we see there that we wanted to include some of these other trips so you guys would see what you're going to be able to identify on your trips as well. You just might hear me talking about Fiji a little bit because we're going there next week. All right, so Fiji itself is an archipelago, I always say that wrong, in the South Pacific. It has over 330 islands. We've got trips to 2 of them. And yes, it has over 390 coral species. So this is Papua New Guinea up here. So this is up in the Coral Triangle. This is Australia, this larger piece here. And Fiji is over here on the right-hand side. So we're pretty far from the United States and Canada and where most of us are, but very much close to the Coral Triangle. And basically, because this area is in that same kind of channel, you're going to see what's called the neighbor effect. So the neighbor effect means that all of those ocean currents that are coming down through the Coral Triangle are bringing all of that kind of seeding that happens there. All of the spawning is hitting that current and it's being brought down into the areas like Fiji and French Polynesia and areas like that. And you're going to see a lot of that larvae and so forth landing in those areas. The kind of environments we'll see in all of these areas that we're going to include things like bommies. So the picture that you see there is kind of a bommie. It's a large mound of coral. And then also some sheer walls, some shallower lagoon areas. We should have pretty crystal clear water in Fiji this time of year. It'll be warm. So we'll have, warm, clear water is kind of what we're expecting. And, in a lot of our other trips, when we go to Indonesia and things like that, sometimes we have little bit more murky water, like if we go to Komodo or something like that, because you're seeing a lot of those larger pelagics come in to feed, and they like that water. So sometimes we want that murkier water because we want to see those really big things. Now, we also will see probably mantas in Fiji. So just, keep that in mind as well. Now, a couple things I want to note about this picture. There are several things in this picture that count as creatures you're going to see. And I wanted to point out that there are both hard and soft corals in this picture, which is why I chose it. You have some hard coral structures here, which basically just means that they're not going to wave in the wind, right? Or in the current. And then you have some soft coral structures, and those are going to wave in the current. And then the other thing you have in this picture is all of these fish, and all of these fish are small. So they're smaller fish, and these are called anthias. And anthias, they form what is called clouds. So you don't call them schools or whatever necessarily, they're called clouds. And they come in so many different colors, and they're beautiful. And they will kind of, if you come close, they'll all just suck down into the reef. And then you go away a little bit and they'll all pop back up. And so they're often referred to as popcorn fish. So that's another way people refer to them sometimes because of that behavior, how they kind of pop up and pop back down. And some of them have this little tendril. I don't know how big your screen is or if you can see that, but there's a little tendril up here on the top, little fin. And you'll see that sometimes, on some of the top of these larger ones, but they are just beautiful, and there's so many of them, and just a really cool thing to see and something to not miss. Like don't skip over the little tiny fish just because they're little tiny. All right. So our soft coral, and if you weren't aware, coral is living animals. It's not a plant. It is a colony of animals. And so soft coral as well. Something to be aware of, especially in Fiji, is the golden rule. And that is that if there is no current, there's no purple. So when we go places like Rainbow Reef, for instance, if there is no current, we're going to see those corals kind of deflate, and they're going to look kind of like wilted broccoli. But when the current is going and they blossom out so that they can feed, that's when you're really going to see that spectacular color and beauty that we really can get a good show and see a lot from them. And you're going to see all the creatures that go along with them. And that's, just really, we want to embrace the current while we're there. And this is one of the creatures that lives in the little soft corals that look like broccoli. This is a candy crab. Some of them are super tiny, like super, super tiny. But I took pictures of some in Indonesia that were like as big as the end of my thumb. Like they were quite big. So little candy crabs, these little spiky guys, are a fun one to keep an eye out for when you're getting into those soft corals. Remember that there are things in there hiding. There are nudibranchs that mimic almost every kind of coral and look like every kind of coral. So you want to make sure that you're watching for things that don't quite look like they match, and kind of keeping an eye out for those when you can. All right, cuttlefish are something else that we are likely to see. They will change color, not only color, but they will change texture. And cuttlefish are so awesome to watch. If you go toward them, they're going to go away from you more than likely. But if you hold still, they will likely just hold still as well. And they will sit there and give you a spectacular show. They will ripple color along their sides. Like the stripes on this one. This is one that I took a picture of. The stripes on his side changed. The dots changed. He got spiky sometimes, like literally spiky. Their texture changes, and sometimes it went away. And then all the little, their little tentacle, well, not tentacles, their arms in the front. They like to lift them up like this. I don't know if you can see me, but they lift them up and they kind of put two of them up and they kind of smell. And so they're like sensing, and it's really cool to watch the way they interact. I just spent 2 months in Malaysia. I went for the rig in April and I stayed all the way through a couple weeks ago. I just came home at the middle of June, sorry. And while I was there, I ran into a few cuttlefish on my last part of my adventure. And if I would move forward at all, they would back up. But if I moved back, they would come toward me. And it was almost like just a kind of a seesaw motion. But I started singing to one of them and he started rippling, changing colors, and it was really cool. So, maybe try that. It might work for you. I like to sing the theme to Star Trek because I can sing it without words and I just like hum it. But anyway, if you ever hear the theme to Star Trek going underwater, it's me. All right. Another cephalopod that you're likely to see is the day octopus. So in Fiji, especially, they have day octopus, which are the larger octopus. So these ones can get a couple of feet. And one way to watch out for them is to look for their midden piles. And the midden piles are outside of their den. They tend to discard shells and like crab carcasses, the carapaces and all of that. And you'll just start seeing these piles of discarded shells and dead stuff. And if you actually pay attention to that and you look around, you might find a den where you'll find an octopus. So keep an eye out for those little midden piles and you might find it. And they're not always red. Obviously, they can change color as well and they adapt to their environments, but that is one of their colors. Blue-ringed octopus, not as common in Fiji, very common in the Coral Triangle, but definitely worth commenting on because although all octopuses are venomous, the blue ring is the most venomous, I assume. I believe that's the truth. I believe MJ could probably answer that for me. Yeah, MJ, give me a thumbs up. So, yep, that's the most venomous and also very tiny. They're very little. They would fit very easily in the palm of your hand. Don't do that because their venom is in their beak, which is underneath all those legs. So you do not want to have them on you. However, they are not looking to be on you. So just leave them alone. Don't touch them, obviously, as with anything else. And you'll notice if you can even see the blue rings on this one, they're very light. When they are aggravated or upset, they give really bright flashes of those blue rings, or the rings get very deep in color. And then it's very obvious that they have blue rings on them. I mean, very, very obvious. They like glow. And that is their warning sign that they are ready to fight. And I was actually taking pictures of one time in Indonesia, and I was giving it plenty of space, and all of a sudden it just started flashing blue, and I was like, "Whoa, buddy, I'm like 3 feet away from you, and you're 2 inches tall. Like, like I'm not crowding you. I hope I'm not causing a problem here." And then all of a sudden he inked, and I was like, "What is going on?" And then I realized there was another one right there, and they started fighting, and it was so cool. And I did have my GoPro going, but I mean, GoPro from 3 feet away for two creatures that are 2 inches tall, not great footage, but I did get it on tape. So it's kind of interesting. It just isn't very clear. So anyway, All right. Ghost pipefish, among other kinds of pipefish that I'm sure we'll see. We'll probably see some stick pipefish and things like that. But the ghost pipefish is always a fun one. You'll see these alongside of crinoids or feather stars a lot of the times. And they just have these little spikes all over them, and they blend really well into their environment. They just kind of disappear. So, and even if you're looking right at them and you kind of look away and you look back, it's very hard to focus on them again sometimes. So ghost pipefish are a big deal when you find them. And a lot of times you'll find them in 2s or 3s. So keep an eye out for those. And a lot of times also they hang upside down. So the signal for them is like this. Pygmy seahorses. One of my favorite things in the whole world. Pygmy seahorses are literally the size of a staple. They are super tiny. And these are both pictures that I took. Pictures I'm very proud of. Well, the one on the right I'm very proud of. The pink one, it was just so hard to get a picture of that I was just happy to get one at all. But they are so small and yet so detailed, and they're in these Gorgonian sea fans, and they just blend right in. But they are known to be in Fiji, so I am hoping that we will see them there, and they're in most places in the Coral Triangle as well. Allison, did you have a question?
I do. Do you do all this with a GoPro? That's amazing.
No, these are with my TG6.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yep. And I am now moving onto a Sony instead of my TG6, which is giving me anxiety, but I'm trying to get even sharper. Like this little pink guy, I would be able to get a much sharper picture from a distance. Like you have to be really close with a TG6 to get that kind of detail on something that small.
Those are insanely beautiful.
Thank you. Yeah, I try to use my pictures whenever I can, but sometimes I'm in a hurry and I have to use Google Images. All right. Next up is ribbon eels. So I heard somebody say ribbon eels earlier. Maybe it was Heather. I'm not sure. But ribbon eels are always a treat to find. Usually all you see is just kind of the top part of the body sticking out of a hole. And they just kind of move and wave like this. And they just look angry. And it's really hard to get pictures of them because they move so much that it's hard to focus on them. On the occasions where they come out of their little holes, this is what they look like when they swim. And that's why they are called ribbon eels. They actually are all black when they're young. So the juveniles are black. Then they turn blue with the yellow accents on them. And they're not very big, by the way. They like when the head and body are sticking out of the hole, it's usually only about that big. So only about like 6 inches of it will stick out of the hole. And then as they get older, they become wise and they turn into females. and then they have their breeding time and then they die. So yeah, so maybe not so wise after all. But yes, that's their kind of life cycle right there. So they spend most of their lives in the blue cycle. Yellow margin morays are enormous. Like they can be enormous. So like this one on the right is fairly young. So it still has some really dark gray on its snout. It still has like more speckly yellow in its color here. And then you get to this one over here and he's mostly yellow with just like spots, and his snout is now more of a gray. This one is probably, I'd say it was almost 2 feet in circumference. You might want to let that sink in for a second. Like, he was like a sleeping bag. Like, yeah. And then this one was more like the size of your typical green moray. So yeah, they are so cool though, and I just love them. They have a little bit more blunt of a snout than what you see in your green morays that we've seen more often in the Caribbean and places like that. But they're a cool one to watch out for. So watch for those green speckles. I should have put snowflake eels in here too. They're a really fun one to watch out for as well. They have also a yellow and black pattern on their face, but their bodies are white and black. So those are snowflake morays. Okay, so sea snakes. We do have a couple varieties I wanted to mention. First one is the banded sea crate. And they do look like snakes. They have very stubby faces, very small mouths. Yes, they are venomous. They're very venomous, but they're also incredibly docile. And all they care about is hunting for things in the coral and then getting back up to air, because they have to get back up to the air in order to breathe, in order to digest what they've swallowed, and they have to get back to land. And then also, because their little tiny mouths are so small, they don't have any interest in getting into it with a big old human. So I actually saw a video, and I talked about this when I was in Malaysia too. I saw a video of a guy who was diving, and it kind of went viral, so you might have seen it, that one of these banded sea crates wrapped around his leg, and he looked down and he saw it, and he just stopped everything, and he held perfectly still, complete control, just held perfectly still. And the second that, then it kind of sniffed around, it was like, oh, there's no food here, and it took off. And as soon as it took off, man, you should have seen how fast that guy swam off. And I was like, he is a dive professional. He has to be a dive professional, because he knew not to try to get it off of him. He left it alone. He stayed completely calm, but he also knew it was dangerous and got out of there the second he could. So just know, keeping control, keeping your buoyancy, keeping calm. Calm is always the answer when you're diving, always the answer. So banded sea crate is this guy, and notice he's got very black and white stripes. His tail is going to be like, he's round all the way down, and then his tail goes kind of flat in a vertical way. And his face is white. Then the next one, the yellow-lipped sea crate, which is more common in Fiji, is gray and black with a little bit of white on it, and its face is yellow. So this is the yellow-lipped sea crate. So they're very cute. And in Malaysia, not while I was on the rig, but while I was there doing my residency, I actually had one go up under my, not the yellow lip, but the black and white one, had one go up under my chin, and I didn't even know. Like, it just went right across here. And my dive buddy was like, and I'm like, what? Just looking around, of course, but nothing. Mantis shrimp, favorite for a lot of people. There are a few different kinds of these. Did somebody have a question? Oh, no, we have a guest that needs to be in. Okay. Thank you, Allison. We have a few different kinds of mantis shrimp. We have this guy, which is the peacock mantis shrimp. He has the purple eyes and the bright colors. He also has those punchy fists. So he's the one that can, punch a crab or a shell, and the punch is so fast, it like sparks lightning. And you should do some research on them if you haven't heard about mantis shrimp, because they're fascinating. Their eyes have like they register more colors and more spectrum than anything else on the planet. They're just really incredible creatures. But there are other kinds. There's one kind that stays down in a hole. If you see one that is in a round hole in the ground, that is not a peacock. The peacocks are gonna be in the reef. But if there's one that's in the hole in the ground and it's just sitting there looking up at you and its eyes are a little more oblong instead of being very round, that is probably a spearing mantis. And those are more brown, just kind of more sand colored to blend in. They blend in very well. And they literally will just spear straight upward at a fish that is going past their den. So, don't wiggle your fingers over their dens. That would be a bad idea. All right. Crown of thorns starfish. These come in different colors in different regions. I put this picture on here because this is the color they are in Fiji. In a lot of Indonesia, they're very purple. In Malaysia, they're more of a kind of more of a blue with kind of a peachy color. This one's more pale than more kind of pale and orange. But the last month that I was in Malaysia, I was actually doing crown of thorns culling because they are completely out of control in a lot of areas. Their natural predators have been, of course, devastated by humans for the most part. And so they reproduce very quickly. And it has been discovered that they can be killed by injecting them with vinegar. So they are highly venomous, and those spines are about 2 inches long at least on the ones where I was. So we had a gun with a really long needle on it, and we would inject them with vinegar and they would just immediately shrivel up. Like they reacted to it immediately, but they are just destroying the reef. They are coral killers for sure. So Heather, you had a question?
It did. What are their natural predators?
So they have a few natural predators. The main one that has been destroyed by humans is the Triton snails, the Triton's trumpets, which are the big snails that have the beautiful shells, and they'll just crawl on top of one and like suck the life out of it. But people thought the shells were pretty.
Yeah, I haven't seen, when I was in Fiji a few years ago, I didn't see anybody injecting them, but I did see the guides like take them off the coral and move them somewhere else and put a pile of rocks on them. Because they don't like stab them or try to kill them because they just reproduce.
Yeah, and if you cut an arm off of them, it'll grow an entire new starfish. Yeah.
So they would move them and put a pile of rocks on them to kind of slow them down.
Slow them down just a little bit because they're pretty strong little critters. But yeah, they're like big marshmallows with spikes all over them, and just injecting them with a little vinegar is all it takes, and it'll kill them, and then they become part of the food chain instead of destroying the coral. So it helps if it's an area where they're overpopulated, and they're producing millions of eggs a day, then that's a problem. Allison?
Yeah, will we be injecting them in Fiji?
No, it takes a certification and safety course to do it. And I was down there for a month volunteering to do that. But if they get, what I read about the area in Fiji where we're going, if they get out of control in that area, they basically organize all the local dive guides and they get volunteers to go out, and they basically just do a huge sweep of the area and they kill them all off. The problem with these starfish is that they spawn into the current. So basically they might be really bad in one area, But if they spawn in that area, then the next area where they're going to be down bad is down current. So it's, you know, you have to keep kind of constant tabs on them. They ebb and flow based on where they last spawned a lot. So Australia is dealing with them right now to the point where they are destroying the Great Barrier Reef. Yeah, these guys are a real problem right now. So in Fiji, they're known as nebula. Yeah, but there's something that's kind of personal to me because I just spent a month of my life, you know, learning about them and trying to help control the population in Malaysia. So, any other questions about COTs? Okay. All right, map puffers. I love map puffers. These are the guys that you come around the corner and somebody goes, puffer, and you're like, oh, and you're looking for something this big, and they're like, they're giant, they're gigantic, and they always look pregnant. Map puffers always look pregnant. They're so oddly shaped. You can't tell as much in this picture, but I use this picture because you can see how to tell it's a map puffer. The lines coming out radiating from their eyes and the geometric patterns on them, that's a dead giveaway that it's a map puffer, plus if it looks pregnant. And they have cute little teeth. I don't know if you can see the little tooth right here, but they have a cute little pointy tooth right there. This one, also with cute little teeth, is a black spotted puffer or a dog face puffer. And he also looks pregnant. And this one is very common in Fiji. You'll see them all over the Coral Triangle as well, along with masked puffers and guinea fowl puffers and a lot of the others that are very similar to this in shape and size. So these ones are more of kind of a normal size, similar to our balloon fish that we see a lot in the Caribbean. Leaf scorpion fish. These are the ones that the dive master will go like this. Leaf scorpion fish are scorpion fish, so you know, please be careful around them. Oh, my assistant is here. Hello, Noodle. Would you like to say hi to the people? They are really cool, and they just kind of like float around in the water column. They're sitting there on the coral and they're bending, you know, they can't seem to stay up straight, but that's how they camouflage themselves, is by literally looking like a leaf. But it often looks like they're just struggling to save their lives, but that is how they're supposed to be. So it's really interesting to see them kind of walking around on their little fins though. And speaking of walking around on their little fins, I don't know how well you can see this guy, but this is a sea moth. He has a little snout right here. This is his eyeball. And he has kind of a wing right here. And then a bumpy back. And there's a little fin right here. And then this goes out to his tail. So this is most closely related to seahorses and pipefish. But these guys walk along the bottom of the ocean, so they walk along sandy areas, and they just kind of suck little phytoplankton and stuff out of the water. Very cool, very cute. They have a really neat geometric pattern on their backs. But another thing to keep an eye out for. The first time I saw one of these, I had no idea they existed, and just such a cool thing to see. So if you can't really see what this picture is, you know, look up sea moth on your phone or something and take a look at some pictures of them. All right, nudibranchs. We have some nudibranch lovers. So of course I am, lots of love, lots and lots of love. I am one of those nudibranch lovers. So we have a variety of different kinds of nudibranchs. And they all have some things in common that makes them nudibranchs. So those are kind of these three elements. They all have rhinophores, so those two little things poking out of their heads, little harder to see on some of them, like this guy who has serrata all over him. He has rhinophores in the front. They're just a little harder to see. And then gill plumes, which is this in the back. Okay. Again, with the serrata, a little harder to see, and serrata. So like the serrata are there. You're going to have all of these things on all of them. You just may not be able to tell. So like this guy here has some bumps, and those bumps are his serrata. So serrata are not always long plumes, and gill plumes are not always coming out of the tail. Sometimes they come out the side and they're a little more subtle. But they all have these things. So if you see distinct rhinophores, and you can kind of make out that there's like an edge around it and things like that, it's probably a nudibranch. So the bronchial plume, which means the gill plume, so this thing that it breathes out of, shares that space with its anus. So it breathes and poops out of the same hole. Just a fun little fact about nudibranchs. All right, and then we have very closely related, but slightly different, also sea slugs, but different, marine flatworms. And we have a lot of love for marine flatworms as well. And sometimes marine flatworms will they seem to create like it looks like they have rhinophores in the front because of the way they shape themselves. Like you can kind of see it right here. I don't know how big your screen is that you can see that, but you can kind of see that they'll like shape the front like it's rhinophores, but they also can flatten out completely, and they can swim a little more easily than other kinds of nudibranchs because they're not as bulky. So they can get up in the water and they can swim, but all of them can swim if they get pushed into the water column. They can move their bodies and swim, and it's actually really beautiful to watch. They feed on, among hydroids and other things, sea squirts and tunicates. So tunicates are often in colonies, but sometimes also singular. So this one that looks very much like a heart, and when it's pumping, it really looks like a heart, has two little valves. So there's one right here and one right here, and you'll see it kind of pushing water through there, and these are filter feeders. So you'll see each of these little tunicates in this colony also has a smaller hole and a larger hole, and they all do that little pumping action. Sometimes you can see it and sometimes you can't, but tunicates are really interesting, just kind of simple creatures that are typically stationary. And you'll see a lot of times nudibranchs are easiest to find if you know what they eat. So if you're looking for the environments that they feed on, then it's going to be easiest to find them. So if you look for these little clusters of tunicates, a lot of times you can find them. If you look for small clusters of hydroids, a lot of times you can find them there as well. I can't say batfish, spadefish. I tried to say batfish. Spadefish, because they're shaped like a spade, are these large kind of angelfish-like guys, and they have the stripes as they get to be adults, and they have these long dorsal fins, not dorsal, pectoral fins. They have really cute little behaviors that if you can get them to interact with you a little bit, like a lot of times just kind of rubbing your fingers together, they'll come over to you, and they like sound, and like they'll come over and just kind of investigate. But this big gray guy comes from this beautiful black and orange juvenile. And actually that fish is very tall, but very thin, like not very wide this way, but actually super, super thin as far as like the other way, like from the face, very thin. So they're really interesting. And the reason I don't call them batfish and the reason the scientific community doesn't call them batfish is because this is a batfish. So they're typically by locals called batfish. These guys are. But if you know these as batfish, it's hard to then call these batfish because that's a batfish. This is a spadefish. So call them what you want, but I call them spadefish. I have no opinion about it, obviously. All right. Sweet lips. These are something that are not found in the Caribbean. And they're so cool to see. The adults usually are a foot or two long, so they can get pretty big. I have a couple types here. There's the Harlequin on this side and the Oriental on this side. The adults are these two. The juveniles are the more red or colorful ones. But these are kind of an intermediate stage. This is what the really juvenile one looks like. And I'm sure most of you have seen these before. But basically the juveniles are so cool to find because they just go, they like get head down and they just go like this. That's all they just go like this. And at some point in their evolution, somebody was like, act like something that's floating. Don't act like something that's swimming. And they were like, okay, swimming looks like this. I think floating looks like this. So that's what they do. Yes, I'm okay. I'm okay. I'm not having a heart attack. It's okay. It's okay. So that's what they just look frantic all the time. And it is so crazy. And they're almost always like face down. And it's so cute. And they've got the polka dots on them and they're very floppy. Especially these ones. This is the Harlequin. The Oriental is a little more smooth. It does the same thing, but it is a little more smooth. So it doesn't have quite as much frill to its fins, but very interesting little guys. So, all right. Any questions about sweet lips or anything else? All right. Bumphead parrotfish. They have this beautiful smile and this beautiful head that looks kind of like a, you know, yeah. But anyway, the males, they take that big part of their head that is very, very hard and they run at each other and they smack it together. And I don't know if you've ever seen a documentary on it or anything, but it is so loud, it like wakes up the whole ocean. And they hit so hard that it literally evaporates the water in between them. So really interesting to get the female's attention kind of behavior. They have those big beaks because they eat coral. So they have to chew up coral that they then poop out as sand. And that's where a lot of our sand comes from, is from parrotfish pooping it out. However, the Napoleon wrasse, which I have on the left, which is another large fish that has a bump on its head. And these are large, like 2 to 4 feet in length, kind of large, both of these. But the Napoleon wrasse is very pretty as far as like the colors coming down its sides and things like that. And it does have a hump on its head that can be pretty pronounced, but it does not have the like Beavis and Butthead kind of teeth, and it does not have the weird crevice in the middle of its forehead. So a couple of things to separate them. All right. Some more things we'll see in Fiji for sure. White tip reef sharks. as opposed to the white tip oceanic, which is the one shark that I don't trust, because they like to taste things. I don't like white tip oceanics. I do not take my eyes off of. But white tip reef sharks are very shy, and they're always hiding under things, and they're so cute, and they get in little cuddle puddles, especially when they're pups, and they like a whole bunch of them in little cuddle puddles is very cute. And you'll also see gray reef sharks. So they may have some black, but they're not black tips. They don't have black on both the tail and, you know, the fins. So they're not going to be black tips. So even if you see some black, it's not a black tip. It's going to be a gray reef shark that we're seeing in Fiji. And not the oceanic white tips. You're only going to see probably the white tip reef. All right. And then kind of the last thing I want to talk about here, because we are definitely taking up the whole hour, which I was not planning to do. But I want to talk about life on an anemone, because that is my personal favorite environment. I love clownfish. Clownfish are fun. Clownfish are mean. They bite me all the time because I like to take pictures of their eggs, and I like to take pictures of all the other things that live in their anemones. And if you didn't know this, clownfish are damselfish. And damselfish are the ones that are always biting people when they're trying to swim by, or getting in your face and like whatever. So yes. So yeah. So since clownfish are damselfish, they have nice little sharp teeth. You can kind of see them right there, little sharp teeth. And they have taken chunks out of me before. They've made me bleed underwater. So they're not very nice. But along with the mean little anemone fish, there are also beautiful shrimp and other things that are in the anemones. This is a blue Peterson shrimp that is in a corkscrew anemone that you can see there in the background. Very small. The corkscrew is also very small, and inside of that corkscrew, there's always going to be a snapping shrimp. And if you ever look at my Instagram, occasionally I'll post videos of getting manicures underwater, and you always have to like present yourself to be approved by the snapping shrimp before the Peterson shrimp will touch you. And once the snapping shrimp says you're okay, then the Peterson shrimp will come out and they will clean you. There's always someone in charge that has to approve your manicure, whether it's on a corkscrew or other type of anemone, just so you know. The clownfish, there are lots of different kinds. We have skunk clownfish, which is the kind like this that have, or anemone fish, that have the white strip down their backs. We have the ocellaris, which is your kind of more typical clownfish style. A lot of those are actually false clownfish, but that's the type that we see and we expect as clownfish. And then we have the Clark's anemone fish, which are these darker ones. And those actually bite pretty hard as well. Yeah, there are some really beautiful ones, a lot of different kinds. The tomatoes are really common in Fiji. They have a darker red, and they have just one white stripe and then no other markings down the rest of their bodies. And they're really cool. A lot of times they're in kind of dark anemones for some reason. I'm not sure why. They're just kind of drawn to darker anemones. But also we have the things that clean the anemone in its smaller ways. So we have like these porcelain shrimp, which have these little feathery claws, and they just sit there and they like gather everything from the water, and then they clean off their little feathers, and it's so cute. They're so adorable, and their patterns are just beautiful, and their little beady eyes, little wee beady eyes are adorable. So porcelain crabs, awesome. And then we have a lot of kinds of shrimp. So this is actually an anemone right here. This tiny little anemone has a glass shrimp on it. So this clear glass shrimp with the purple claws on him, his little purple eyes. And then over here, oh, I should know his name. He has like a fancy name. It's not emperor, but it's something, because I know what an emperor shrimp looks like, but it's something like that. It's some sort of fancy name that this guy has. But he has a very intricate pattern on him. And then these are sexy shrimp. So sexy shrimp are always moving their butts. So they're always dancing. Don't tell anybody I danced. It's terrible. And this is on another type of anemone here. There are lots of kinds of anemones. For instance, this is a bubble anemone. And this bubble anemone is home to a very specific type of shrimp called a bubble anemone shrimp. A very, very clear, tiny little shrimp. And a lot of times these will also have these beautiful orangutan crabs in them. So if you're ever diving with me and I go and do orangutan crab, that's this guy. He's so cute. Look at his little eyes. You've got a little eye right there and a little eye right there. And this is a claw right there. Yeah. So anyway, they look hairy. They're all covered in algae. They're absolutely adorable. So that is the last of my creatures. I know that was really long and I'm sorry, but I get a little excited and I keep adding more stuff in and then I lose track of time. So so our whole thing is we of course want to respect the locals, and that is all of the things under the water. We want to take care of that environment so that those creatures are there for everyone to enjoy and so that they can live out their lives and fulfill their purpose in the world. Yeah, and we will enjoy them and just watch.